Welcome back to my Dark Souls 3 The Fire Fades Edition Suedo guide and walkthrough, pre-recorded commentary run. This is the third installment, and we're going to be taking on Vordt of the Boreal Valley. Now, as a good guide and walkthrough creator would do, I'm going to be separating areas and bosses into their own videos because, well, first of all, these games have a rich amount of lore, areas to explore. And second of all, a lot of these bosses have some pretty shitty runbacks, so I want to show just how annoying some of these are. Now, just as a disclaimer, because some people are going to be up in arms about this shit, I will be summoning for most of the bosses in this run, though take note that if you do summon any phantoms, whether they be phantoms like this, which you have to keep in mind that the game's menus are not exactly precise, you will lose a 25% cut of the souls you normally get from the boss, and if you help your friends in online co-op, you will only gain 25% of the original value from the boss that you're helping your friend with. Now, of course, if you have the covetous Silver Serpent Ring, you can negate a good chunk of the penalty normally taken from bosses. This is the only real instance of having penalty besides people yelling at you over the internet, because God forbid you use a game mechanic to your advantage. Now, that being said, as with these games, not every single boss has a summon that you can rely on, but a good chunk of them will. There is one that's extra annoying for no real reason, but we'll get to that later. And also, with a lot of these bosses, I will have the boss fog already open, because I can imagine some of you will be doing some of these runbacks a lot. But Vordt here, even with phantoms, is not really that much harder. The only difference is that you don't want to be all up in his front grill, because his hammer just deals annoying ass damage and is one of the few enemies to inflict frostbite, which when inflicted you'll gain a stamina degeneration, and no, that's not me misspeaking. And also, please try not to be one of those people that when you have phantoms just expecting them to do all the work, even with the AI, because you can't rely on the AI that fucking hard unless you're, well, just being an asshole. And also, the phantoms in this game are not really cannons of glass cannon defining features. But also because you're using phantoms in this fight anyway, assumingly, Vordt's second phase will be a little easier to deal with. But having King Lion Albert, whatever his name is, you will do a lot of proper stuff against the boss. Now, as with Bloodborne and Demon Souls to an extent, every time you beat a boss you will obtain a bonfire, which makes some of the pre-placed bonfires a bit of a joke. I know there is one that people love to bring up. And yes, Dark Souls 1 technically did this, but only with the 4 Lord Souls you had to find or whatever, so it makes sense from a lore standpoint. So feel free to use them if you want. There will be some I won't be using for obvious reasons, because it'll just clutter the bonfire menu, and for a reason you can't just choose to remove bonfires from the menu, because some of the bonfires, well, they're just really unnecessary, but I'm not going to get into that specific ordeal because I could go on all day about some of the placements, because these same people want to complain about Dark Souls 2 having too many bonfires, and even something like The Lost Bastille having 6, and yes, I'm counting Belfry Luna. They are more cardiologically, if that's even the word I'm looking for, more better placed than any bonfire in any other game. And I'm not even kidding about that. I feel they're more fair enough to be placed where they are. It's just people look at numbers and they get pissed off. Kind of like another topic that I'm not even going to talk about right now, because I could derail that entirely. Especially to some of the characters that this game boasts. But anyway. There is also a leash mechanic, which enemies will not enter in certain areas, and more importantly, boss areas. You could use this to your advantage if you want to kill this dude without having to rely on summons. I mainly do this because he does give a good amount of souls early on, so you'll want to try to take advantage of it if possible. Just make sure you don't kill Emma if you plan on doing this, because, well, the boss fog will get in the way, and, well, you either have to fight Dancer or, well, just avoid her altogether. I do kill Emma here because I will be fighting Dancer, but not till way later. If you want to, you can kill her earlier to get access to Lothar Castle and the other areas up above. the furthest you can get up to is Dragon Slayer armor, but even then, you won't get the item needed to access the Grand Archives because the fucking key is not placed until you've beaten 2 main bosses. And I also quit out because I don't want to deal with Dance's bullshit. Also, it doesn't need to be said, but make sure you get rid of the Lothric Knights, or otherwise you'll have to deal with them when you quit out. With the quitting out rule that this game does, enemies will be reset to their positions, and you don't want to be ganked after beating a boss. Especially if you're low at embers, and as I said, they can, well, be kind of sparse if you're not a very good player. Not that I'm good as Lobos Jr. or anything, or even other people, like Ouroboros, I think that's his name. The dude with the Falchion and Elite Knight armor, but I like to think I'm at least competent enough to take on these games. I'm just not going to bother with Elderman because, well, I'm too old for this shit. I think that's the best way to put it. But I'll be able to talk about a lot more stuff because in the next installment we're going to be going through the Undead Settlement and talk about a lot of other things that this game does good and some, well, not so good. Thank you for watching and take care.